On September 11, 2003, the full moon of the Mid-Autumn Festival illuminated family reunions, and the festive atmosphere was everywhere. Families gathered around the table, sharing stories and joy. However, outside the emergency room of a hospital in Suzhou, Jiangsu Province, China, a man named Kuo Zichang sat in the waiting area, his face filled with sorrow. Inside the emergency room was his beloved wife, Gusu. Upon hearing that his daughter was in critical condition, Kuo Zichang's father-in-law, Gurong, rushed to the hospital. He didn't have time to grieve. Instead, he immediately contacted an old friend who was the director of a hospital in Suzhou to assist in the emergency treatment. Unfortunately, despite the doctor's efforts over 2 hours, they were unable to save Gusu. Before retiring, Gurong had been one of the leading medical experts in the region. He had spent his life saving countless patients, but now he was powerless to save his own daughter. At that moment, the pain in the father's heart was overwhelming. As for the son-in-law, Kuo Zichang, his grief was unbearable. He collapsed beside his wife's body, crying bitterly, and even attempted to bang his head against the wall to take his own life. This deeply moved everyone present, as they could feel the profound love between the couple. Not only that, Kuo Zichang fell to his knees, crying as he spoke to his in-laws, "You entrusted Gusu to me, but I failed to take good care of her. I'm so sorry. From now on, I will be your son by blood." Seeing the immense grief in their son-in-law, Mr. Gu also felt deep sorrow. However, with his many years of experience in medicine and his knowledge of cardiology, he couldn't shake the suspicion that there was something unusual about his daughter's death. Gusu had always been healthy growing up. It was only in the past 2 years that she began experiencing dizziness, chest pain, and gradually developing symptoms of cardiovascular disease. Despite frequent medical checkups, the cause of her condition remained undiagnosed. When Mr. Gu arrived at the hospital, he observed that his daughter's pupils were dilated, her entire body was blue from head to toe, her abdomen was swollen, and there was fluid at the corners of her mouth. He also learned that her cause of death was listed as respiratory failure, with her heart stopping afterward. All these signs suggested that Gusu didn't die from heart disease, as the hospital had concluded, but rather exhibited symptoms more consistent with poisoning. Because of this, Mr. Gu quietly preserved the fluids from his daughter's body to investigate further. Around 3 a.m. on September 12th, filled with suspicion, Mr. Gu privately called Kuo Zichang, who was sitting beside his wife's body outside, for a talk. He said to his son-in-law, "We are both doctors. From the time you had dinner until Gusu was brought to the hospital, it was just the two of you at home. You need to tell me exactly how Gusu died." Faced with his father-in-law's questioning, Kuo Chang became highly agitated. He raised his hand to the sky and swore, "I absolutely did nothing wrong to Gusu." Seeing his son-in-law's firm stance, Mr. Gu didn't press further. However, to clarify the cause of his daughter's death, he proactively suggested conducting an autopsy. This decision was met with general agreement from most people, but when Kuo Zichang heard this, he immediately collapsed to the ground, his eyes filled with an inexplicable fear. On the afternoon of September 13, 2003, as forensic doctors were preparing to perform the autopsy, Kuo Zichang suddenly burst in. He knelt before the doctors, desperately tried to stop him from performing the autopsy on his wife. At that moment, it took about 7 or 8 men, but they still couldn't pull him away. He even pointed directly at his father-in-law and said, "She's already dead. How can you bear to cut open your own daughter?" Some relatives present tried to reason with him, saying that the autopsy might actually be in his best interest, as it could be necessary to clarify things later. But unexpectedly, these words only made Kuo Zichang even more furious. In this situation, the autopsy was delayed until 6 p.m. before it could finally proceed. The results came out quickly on September 14, 2003. When the Gu family received the autopsy report for their daughter, they learned that ketamine is a short-acting anesthetic that is colorless, odorless, and easily dissolves in water. In medical practice, it is typically used for minor surgeries or diagnostic procedures. However, if ingested, this anesthetic can place significant stress on the heart, particularly when it reaches a certain dosage. It can suppress respiration, leading to heart failure and ultimately death. This anesthetic is a controlled substance that cannot be purchased at regular pharmacies. Only medical professionals have access to it. Upon discovering the cause of his daughter's death, Mr. Gu immediately reported it to the police. Understanding the gravity of the situation, the police quickly realized that this case was far from simple and promptly launched an investigation. Through their investigation, the police learned that Gusu had a cheerful personality, maintained good relationships with her colleagues, and her daily mood was stable. Her co-workers mentioned that 2 days before the Mid-Autumn Festival, Gusu had asked Kuo Zichang to bring medicine to another colleague. The couple appeared to be very affectionate. She also revealed that this year they didn't plan to give mooncakes to Kuo's parents, but instead would send them a monetary gift directly. None of these details indicated that Gusu had any intention of committing suicide, so the police ruled out this possibility. The police then reviewed the hospital's medication records and interviewed Gusu's primary doctor. Through this investigation, they confirmed that she had not been administered ketamine on the day of her death, which allowed the police to rule out the possibility of a hospital overdose. This left only one possibility: Gusu had been murdered. The most likely suspect, someone with easy access to ketamine and the ability to secretly administer it in her daily life, was her husband, Kuo Zichang. Given his suspicious behavior during the autopsy, the police decided to conduct a thorough investigation of Kuo Zichang. Not long after, they found his signature on the hospital records for obtaining the anesthetic, as well as the discarded medicine packaging he had thrown away after poisoning his wife. After compiling the evidence, on the evening of September 23, 2003, the Huzhou District Police took Kuo Zichang into criminal custody. When the police arrived, Kuo Chang was under the impression that his wife's body had already been cremated, so he wasn't concerned and was at his lover's house. After 12 hours of silence in the face of overwhelming evidence, Kuo Zichang finally admitted that he had poisoned Gusu, leading to her death. Facing this harsh reality, Mr. Gu felt an overwhelming sense of pain and blamed himself, saying, "It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, my daughter wouldn't have died." But why did Kuo Zichang resort to poisoning and murdering his own wife? Kuo Zichang was born in 1969 in Pingjiang District, Suzhou City, China. Kuo Zichang grew up in an impoverished family, and daily life was extremely difficult. Growing up in such an environment made him fiercely competitive, driving him to excel in everything he did, whether in academics or any other aspect of life. In 1987, Kuo Zichang was admitted to Suzhou Medical University with outstanding grades. However, his family did not support this decision, believing that the path he had chosen was too challenging and encouraging him to pursue a different direction. Despite this, Kuo Zichang was resolute in his choice, as it was not only a set goal but also a lifelong dream. The more his family opposed him, the more determined he became to prove them wrong by succeeding. During his time at university, Kuo Zichang not only studied diligently but also actively participated in school activities, earning high regard from both his teachers and peers. After graduating with honors in 1992, Kuo Zichang was assigned to intern at Pingjiang District People's Hospital. At that time, this position was highly coveted. Even though he was only an intern, with perseverance and hard work, becoming a full-fledged doctor was just a matter of time. However, this seemingly admirable path did not satisfy Kuo Zichang. He didn't want to spend too much time and effort just to secure a position as a senior doctor at the hospital. Instead, he decided to further his education to open up more opportunities. Kuo Zichang then applied for the graduate program at his alma mater. There's no denying his academic prowess, as he passed the entrance exams for graduate school just over a year later. This achievement led him to meet the most influential person in his life, his graduate advisor, Professor Guo Rong. At that time, Guo Rong was the head of the thoracic surgery department at the second affiliated hospital of Suzhou Medical University, a renowned medical expert in the region and a former standing committee member of the Suzhou People's Congress. Being accepted as his student was an incredibly fortunate opportunity for Kuo Zichang. Continuing his outstanding academic performance, just as he had during his undergraduate years, Kuo Zichang also served as a student council officer and was a member of the Communist Party of China. These qualities made Professor Guo highly regard this talented young man. Kuo Zichang understood that gaining his professor's recognition could completely change his future, so he often went out of his way to assist Professor Guo with small tasks like buying groceries or exchanging gas cylinders, in an effort to grow closer to him. But even Kuo Zichang didn't anticipate that the professor would want to match him with his daughter. To outsiders, Guo Rong appeared to have a successful career and a happy life, but as the saying goes, every family has its own troubles, and there was one issue that constantly weighed on his mind, causing him to frown whenever he thought about it. As it turned out, he had two daughters, Gusu and Gujing, but neither of them wanted to pursue a career in medicine. They often joked with him, saying, "Telling someone to study medicine is a curse." Mr. Guo could only shake his head and smile faintly. However, the thought of spending his entire life in the medical field without anyone to carry on his legacy. After he was gone, it left him with a deep sense of regret. Yet more concerning to him than this was the matter of his eldest daughter, Gusu's marriage prospects. After graduating from college, Gusu worked as an accountant at a construction inspection station. She had a somewhat introverted personality and wasn't interested in makeup or fashion. As a result, even at nearly 26 years old, she had not found a suitable partner, let alone considered marriage or starting a family. As time passed, the aging father grew increasingly worried about this. The arrival of Kuo Zichang brought a glimmer of hope. A talented young man like Kuo Zichang, with outstanding academic achievements, excellent communication skills, and a passion for medicine, was a rare find. If he could become his son-in-law, not only would his daughter have a good husband, but Mr. Gu's career would also have a worthy successor. It seemed like a perfect solution, so Mr. Gu inquired about Kuo Zichang's romantic life. If he already had a girlfriend, Mr. Gu would have dropped the idea. However, after some hesitation, Kuo Zichang shyly admitted to his professor that he didn't have a girlfriend. This prompted Mr. Gu to pursue his plan to match his daughter, Gusu, with his promising student. To his surprise, Gusu and Kuo Zichang quickly developed feelings for each other, and it wasn't long before they began dating. By 1997, in front of friends and family, Kuo Zichang and Gusu walked down the aisle together. During the wedding, Kuo Zichang promised his father-in-law that he would take good care of his daughter. Seeing the young couple whom he had brought together so full of happiness, Mr. Gu felt a deep sense of joy. After Kuo Zichang completed his graduate studies, his father-in-law's connections helped him secure a position at Suzhou Children's Hospital. The benefits and advancement opportunities there were significantly better than at the district hospital where he had previously worked. In truth, Kuo Zichang was also so highly skilled in his field that the Suzhou Evening News published a report on October 8, 2003, about a successful laparoscope surgery performed on a young boy with congenital biliary atresia at Suzhou Children's Hospital. This was the first surgery of its kind in China, and the boy undergoing the procedure was only 2 months old at the time. The lead surgeon for this operation was Kuo Zichang, demonstrating his advanced medical expertise. 4 years into their marriage, Gusu gave birth to a baby girl. To many, Kuo Zichang appeared to be a man who had it all. He had married the professor's daughter, enjoyed a harmonious and happy family life, and had a promising career with a bright future ahead. However, in the eyes of Kuo Zichang's parents, things were not as ideal. They believed that their son's marriage to Gusu was a mistake. In the fall of 1997, while working at an engineering station in Haiti, Kuo Zichang's father unexpectedly received a letter from his son. In the letter, Kuo Zichang expressed his wish for his parents to attend his wedding to Gusu. This puzzled his father greatly, as his son's girlfriend wasn't named Gusu. It turned out that before meeting Gusu, Kuo Zichang had been in a long-term relationship with a primary school teacher. They were deeply in love and had even discussed marriage. However, in order to gain favor with his professor and secure a quicker path to career advancement, Kuo Zichang decided to break up with his girlfriend of many years. His parents met Gusu for the first time at the wedding. They were not pleased with their new daughter-in-law, as their son's previous girlfriend was tall and beautiful, while Gusu was quite plain and petite. Kuo Zichang had always had a positive public image and was well liked by many at Suzhou Children's Hospital. Kuo Zichang was also highly regarded by many of the patients' families, who praised him for his skill and humble demeanor. Whenever Gusu's colleagues had health issues, they would often seek out Kuo Zichang for help, and he would proactively bring them medicine. As a result, everyone had a very favorable impression of him. Ding, a colleague who had worked with Gusu for 8 years, always believed that the couple was a perfect match. The husband had a successful career and was always willing to help others. Meanwhile, Gusu had been promoted to department head just that July. Additionally, Kuo Zichang's personality was gentle and humble. and he never instigated conflicts with anyone. 2 days before the Mid-Autumn Festival, Kuo Zichang brought medicine to one of Gusu's colleagues. Just then, another colleague had returned from a business trip bringing gifts from their hometown, so everyone gathered to enjoy them. Gusu playfully said to her husband, "Feed me." Kuo Zichang smiled and replied, "I've fed you before. You're still like a child." This interaction made everyone around them feel that they were a sweet couple. Colleagues remarked that if the company were to hold a contest for the ideal couple, they would all vote for Kuo Zichang and his wife. But all of this was merely a facade that Kuo Zichang maintained in front of others. In reality, Kuo Zichang and Gusu didn't share the loving relationship that everyone believed they had. In fact, it could be said that they were married in name only, without any real emotional bond. From the beginning, Kuo Zichang never loved Gusu. He married her solely for the benefits that her family could provide. He knew that his rapid career advancement was entirely due to the support of his father-in-law. Shortly after their marriage, at the end of 1997, Kuo Zichang's parents' home was demolished. With nowhere else to stay, they hoped to temporarily live with their son until their new home was built. However, they ended up living in the basement of their son's new house for 10 months. Kuo Zichang's mother believed that the situation wasn't her son's fault, but rather that his wife was the one who didn't agree to the arrangement. She pointed out that the house was allocated to them by Gusu's workplace. However, Kuo Zichang's parents did acknowledge that after the birth of their granddaughter, their daughter-in-law treated them better. Kuo Zichang's mother thought this was because they had worked hard to take care of their granddaughter. However, Gusu's colleagues felt that she treated her in-laws even better than she treated her own parents. Every day after work, she would travel a long distance to have dinner at her in-laws' home. She was also quite generous with them, and for the Mid-Autumn Festival, she prepared a special red envelope with 600 yuan, around $80, just for them. However, Kuo Zichang's father explained that this money was mainly to cover the cost of food, as they would go out of their way to prepare dishes that their daughter-in-law liked. Meanwhile, he and his wife would eat very simply, sometimes just having leftovers. On the other hand, Kuo Zichang's family always felt that Gusu's family looked down on them because they were workers. His father recalled an example. A week after Chu Zichang's wedding, his brother also got married. They chose a slightly more upscale hotel for the wedding, and the Gu family reacted by yelling and refusing to attend. From this, it's clear that in this marriage, Chu Zichang felt like he was constantly catering to his wife and her family. Initially, he may not have minded, but over time, his resentment grew deeper. Additionally, with his competitive nature, he felt that he never received the respect he deserved from Gusu. As a result, the relationship between the couple became increasingly strained. They were merely playing the role of a loving couple in front of others. This was also confirmed by those close to the couple. A close friend of theirs recounted that during the day, both would go to work, and in the evening, they would go to Chu Zichang's parents' house for dinner and to care for their daughter at home. Gusu would watch TV and text her friends while Chu Zichang would go online or prepare for his doctoral studies. They felt like they had nothing to talk about, so their married life just drifted along in a dull, unremarkable way. Another close friend of Gusu believed that both of them were too superficial. Even if there was conflict between them, they wouldn't talk about it, and they even waited for the other to bring up the topic of divorce first. Gusu had once confided in this friend that if Chu Zichang ever suggested a divorce, she would definitely agree. However, Gusu's friend also mentioned that because Gusu felt inferior due to her lower educational background while Chu Zichang was a master's degree holder, she often felt somewhat inadequate. As a result, Gusu was very indulgent toward her husband. She was also very considerate of him. For instance, when Chu Zichang started losing his hair, Gusu researched various folk remedies and specialized treatments, even asking someone to bring back products from Shanghai. Unfortunately, Chu Zichang was not moved by these gestures from Gusu. While he outwardly appeared to be a loving husband, in reality, he had long since betrayed his wife. Moreover, he was a true philanderer, not just involved with one or two women but entangled in numerous extramarital affairs. Chu Zichang was known as a talented young man, and he was surrounded by many young, beautiful nurses who were drawn to him. In 2000, Chu Zichang became infatuated with a beautiful nurse named Zhang at the hospital and quickly developed an extramarital relationship with her. After experiencing the thrill of infidelity, he continued to engage in affairs with several other nurses and interns. These women, aside from being young, attractive, and physically appealing, provided him with something more important, a sense of respect that he craved. In truth, Gusu was entirely unaware of her husband's infidelity. There was an incident where Chu Zichang brought one of his mistresses home, and Gusu caught them in the act. However, Chu Zichang explained it away, saying the woman was just a patient or a pharmaceutical representative visiting to discuss medications. Whenever Chu Zichang texted his lovers, he was always very secretive. As a result, Gusu had a vague sense that something wasn't right, but perhaps out of pride, she only confided in her sister about her suspicions and never told her parents. Among the many women Chu Zichang was involved with, his closest relationships were with a doctor named Zhang Feng, who worked at a district-level hospital, and a nurse at his own hospital. These, the women he cared for most, were Zhang Fan. But she continuously pressured him to divorce Gusu. Deep down, however, Chu Zichang knew that divorcing Gusu was out of the question. It wasn't because he still had feelings for her, but because the Gu family would never let him off easily, and he feared the social backlash. Simply put, he didn't want to divorce because he was afraid of losing the reputation and benefits he had worked so hard to achieve. Thus, on one hand, Chu Zichang enjoyed the career benefits that his wife and her family provided, while on the other, he secretly began plotting a cruel scheme in his mind. If Gusu were to die suddenly after a year or two, his understanding father-in-law would surely not prevent him from remarrying. Chu Zichang started bringing anesthetic home every day after work, secretly mixing it into his wife's coffee or tea. According to his plan, by continuing to poison her in small doses, Gusu would eventually die from what appeared to be heart disease, and no one would suspect foul play. This malicious behavior continued for 2 years. However, his mistress, Zhang Fan, began to apply increasing pressure, telling him that if he didn't divorce, they would have to end their relationship. By this time, it was well known that Gusu had started developing heart problems over the past 2 years. On August 27 and September 5, 2003, Chu Zichang administered 3 doses of the anesthetic into his wife's coffee on each occasion. To create an alibi, after preparing the coffee and instructing his wife to drink it while it was still hot, he hurried off to his shift at the hospital. After drinking the drug-laced coffee, Gusu quickly became ill, experiencing unbearable pain. She called her husband 3 times, but he didn't return. Desperate, she was forced to call her father. When Gu Sirong frantically rushed to his daughter's house, he found that Chu Zichang had arrived before him. Chu appeared to be very concerned, sitting beside his wife but doing nothing to help. Seeing this, Mr. Gu angrily exclaimed, "You're a doctor too. Why aren't you doing anything? Just saying a few words won't ease her pain." He then quickly took his daughter to the hospital, but despite the tests, the cause of her symptoms couldn't be determined. Fortunately, Gusu managed to pull through. After these 2 tests, Chu Zichang believed the time was ripe by now. If Gusu died from heart failure, no one would likely suspect foul play. Finally, on September 11th, while Gusu was taking a bath, he added 5 doses of ketamine to her coffee, then brought it to her, saying sweetly, "My love, after you drink your coffee and enjoy some mooncakes, let's go for a walk and admire the moon." About 10 minutes after drinking the drugged coffee, Gusu began to feel dizzy, and her heartbeat gradually slowed. Chu Zichang helped her to the bedroom and laid her down, then stood outside the room watching as she struggled with death in her agony. Gusu called out to her husband several times, but he coldly ignored her. According to Chu Zichang's later confession, while waiting for his wife to die, he spent over 2 minutes in the kitchen meticulously washing the coffee cup that had contained the anesthetic. After Gusu passed away, he used the same cup to make coffee for himself. This shows just how cold and calculating his mindset was. Around 9:50 p.m., more than 2 hours after Gusu first showed symptoms, and realizing that she was nearing death, Chu Zichang finally picked up the phone to call his in-laws and sister-in-law. He told them that Gusu had relapsed into her old condition and that this time it was very serious. Gijing, knowing that her sister had often experienced dizziness over the past 2 years but had never faced anything this severe, wasn't overly worried at that moment. After making the calls, Chu Zichang began calling for help from the neighbors and rushed his wife to a nearby hospital for emergency treatment. At the time, Gusu's parents were 50 kilometers away, enjoying the moonlight in Sichuan. Upon receiving the call from their son-in-law, they hurried to the hospital. Unfortunately, they didn't arrive in time to see their daughter one last time. Although Mr. Gu ultimately couldn't save his daughter, his experience and knowledge ensured that the person responsible for her death paid the price. On January 2, 2004, the Suzhou Intermediate People's Court held a trial for Chu Zichang. He was found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to death. However, Chu Zichang was dissatisfied with the verdict and appealed. On June 22 of the same year, the Jiangsu Provincial High People's Court issued its final ruling, upholding the original sentence. Since the case came to light, those who knew Chu Zichang were shocked when they learned the truth. They believed he must have been mentally unstable. Beyond the surprise and confusion, there was also a deep sense of fear. How could someone who appeared so perfect, like Chu Zichang, hide such a terrifying side? Dear viewers, modern life can sometimes blind people to the temptations of material wealth and status. However, allowing greed to override conscience, as Chu Zichang did, is the shortest path to moral collapse, leading to punishment by the law. When a person is willing to sacrifice everything, including love and the lives of their loved ones, just to achieve their selfish goals, they not only lose their humanity but also plunge themselves into an inescapable abyss. That concludes today's story. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future videos. See you in the next one.